The first 10 articles within the town of Brookhaven's code are general requirements. It has such as your general provisions, which word definitions that'll be in there, building permits and COs, how those are taken care of, training of all the officials, required attendance at meetings for planning board and Board of Zoning Appeals members, who's on the Board of Zoning Appeals, special use permits and how they're dealt with, town board amendments, who's on the planning board and how they deal with everything. And then that takes us for the first 8 sections. Section 9 is reserved for future laws, which they haven't yet made. And then we get into Article 10, which is your zoning district maps. So with this, we'll click on it, show you what we have. The building zone map, you'd expect it to pop up and show you a map, but that's not the case. They don't provide that for you online. You have to go down to the town assessor's office at the town hall to actually see the map. And that map has the layout of all the districts that are there. This part of the code explains what happens when there's discrepancies or how do you interpret the boundaries. And as you read through all this, they'll tell you exactly what's needed if you run into those situations. You don't have to read through this now because it's not something that happens very often, but the law is in place so that if we do have an issue, it's not a problem. And really what we're looking at is when a line's drawn on a piece of paper, it has a certain thickness to it. That thickness will translate into several feet of difference of distance in real life. And how do we deal with that? That's what this law is all about. So in here, it will also tell us all the different zoning districts that are there, from our residential districts all the way through commercial and industrial. So that's all going to be in there. First thing we're going to take a look at is we're going to go through the residential districts. Okay, so the residence districts. That is Article 14. And you do not need to have these memorized in any way, shape, or form because this is something you always have to go back and look up. Something else that's important to note, that what I'm showing you for the town of Brookhaven does not hold exactly true for the town of Islip, Southold, Huntington, Babylon, East Hampton, Southampton. Each one of those locations has their own zoning code, and they have their own name designations for each of the districts that are there. So let's take a look at what they are. And this we're going to go a little bit more in depth because it is pretty important to see how we get this information. So the first thing it talks about is the maximum building and driveway size for a specific district. So if you're in a Residence A district, the maximum size of your principal structure is 11,250 feet. Not too bad. Okay, the average size of a house is about 2,000 square feet. They're telling you that you can put upwards of a house 5 times the typical house size. So this is not a very restrictive code in that sense. Whether it fits on your property, that's a different story. Okay, but that's the maximum size we can put on. If you have an A5 or an A10 or A2 residence, your house can be up to 30,000 square feet in size. That's close to 3/4 of an acre of building. Plenty of space. And even on the more restrictive, smaller lot sizes for B, C, and D, they allow you to go up to about 7,000, upwards of 11,000 square feet on a home. So pretty generous with the size of the homes. So then within each of those residences, you do have to have a front yard that consists of asphalt, gravel, stone, or dirt for the use of parking vehicles. Okay, it's got to be a driveway, and that shall not exceed 35% of the primary front yard. So you can't have a driveway that exceeds 35% of your total front yard, and that driveway cannot be greater than 24 feet in width. So there are maximum distances these can be. What else we have? As far as the actual dimensions on there, that we're going to get from the table of regulations, which we'll go through a little bit later. We have some requirements for minimum habitable area. How small of a house can you get? I know people have asked in past classes, can I have a tiny house? And the general answer is no, because the zoning code doesn't permit it. This says in all districts except planned retirement, mobile home, residential districts, and commercial, no dwelling shall be erected or altered for one family use unless provisions made therein for not less than 1,000 square feet for the minimum floor area for a single family dwelling. This gets very wordy. This is written by attorneys. You have to be able to read it and understand it. So minimum size of a residential house in a house in a residential district, 1,000 square feet. If you have a one-family dwelling that's constructed on a lot that's 50 feet wide or less, then you can have a habitable area of 700 square feet. Okay, and then let's what it says a little bit further down. If you're at 60 feet, between 60 and 50 feet, then you have to have a minimum of 850 square feet of floor area in the house. And that's exclusive of garages, carports, porches, and breezeways. All right, so here's how they go through the calculation of it. So it even goes into your ceiling heights. This kind of delves a little bit into building code. Minimum height of a dwelling space is 7 feet. So you can't have anything less than that. If you have an attic space, there's requirements for what the minimum square footage is. It'll be 200 square feet in an expanded attic. And minimum height 7 feet. Let's see what else. Two-story residence, both floors have to have a ceiling height of 7.5 feet and a maximum of 300 feet on the floor of any area. The lower level could be applied towards the floor requirements of the dwelling unit. So that's a lot of information in here. So you can see how they define 2 stories, raised ranches, and split levels on there. If you have a legal 2-family, then you have to make sure the house is not less than 2,000 square feet. Okay, 1,000 square feet on the first floor, and the balance on the second floor. When you have multiple dwellings, okay, in districts that allow that, that's your MF districts, multifamily residence districts, the minimum habitable area for each floor unit is 600 square feet. And that's basically looking at apartment complexes for that. I'm sorry, it's 400 square feet for the MF district, and MF1 is 600 square feet. That's all shown in your tables. Okay, so let's talk about the A residence district, and then we'll jump in. After this one, we'll jump into the table. The A residence district is the standard upon which all the other residence districts are measured in the town of Brookhaven. So this is the one. I don't want to say gauge, but it's the template they use for all the other ones. So here's what you are allowed to do in a one-family district. You're allowed to have a one-family dwelling, okay, but no mobile homes. You're allowed to have churches or similar place of worships and parish houses. So any type of religious organization can be present there. You can have a convent or monastery. You are allowed to have open farming, provided that there's no storage of manure, compost, or odor-producing substances within 150 feet of a street line, and you can sell that stuff to the public at your at that property. And you also are allowed to have public schools, parochial schools, and private schools that have a curriculum similar to a public school, but not a daycare facility. So this is what we consider to be as of right. These 5 things are as of rights in an A district. Now there are accessory uses. So on the same lot, you're also permitted to have an accessory private garage. You can have an office for a physician, lawyer, architect, teacher, or similar profession on that same property. However, it can't occupy more than 1/3 of the first floor area. And I have a big problem with this part of the code because it does not mention engineers. You know, the architects get their name in there, but no engineers here. You know, discrimination. We have a lawsuit I think we could go after the town for. But on a more serious note, 1/3 of your first floor area, that could be turned into a legal business. That has some tax benefits for you. You can turn 1/3 of the first floor of your house into a tax write-off if you turn that into a designated business. And I know when I was growing up, I used to go to a dentist that worked out of their house. They had the garages converted over to a dental office, and they lived in the house and had their office in the house as well. So it's a common thing to see. You are also allowed to have customary home occupations when the person who lives in the house is actually doing the work. So you can't start a factory in your basement, but if you have you do crafts and you sell them on Etsy, you can now have that business inside your house. Fencing. Okay, fencing's pretty interesting. No fences can have a height greater than 4 feet from the ground, except in this whole area. Basically what this says is you can put a 6-foot fence on the rear yard, but that's it. You can't have everything else must be 4 foot in height. Other key things just to note in here, and you're gonna have to read some of this on your own as you have time. Wire strands and woven wire fence 6 feet in height are permitted on all lot lines as long as they don't exceed 4 feet or at the radius from the corner of intersecting streets. So what they're saying with this is that if you have a corner lot, you have to make sure that your fence does not obstruct the view from people trying to drive around those corners. So there are restrictions there. And then barbed wire. Yes, you are allowed to have barbed wire and even electrical fencing, but you have to get approval by the planning department, planning division. Okay, it's not something they're going to just hand out all the time. You have to have a really good reason to want to put barbed wire fencing or ribbon wire fencing or even electrical fencing on your house, but you can do it. How about signs? Okay, signs can be placed, but they are regulated under Chapter 57A. You have to go there to find out exactly what size those signs can be. Other accessory uses. You can have barns at your house. They have to be a maximum of 18 feet high. They cannot be more than 50 feet to the rear and side yard setbacks, and they can only be located in the rear yard. Now, what it doesn't mention is what types of animals can go in there, but we'll get to that a little bit later. We can also have accessory uses such as an accessory structure that would be common to the principal structure. Accessory apartments can be used. Detached storage sheds. So how many sheds are you allowed to have on your property? Town of Brookhaven says you're allowed to have one, not greater than 12 feet in height, cannot exceed 600 square feet in area, and if you have them that are if they're less than 144 square feet in floor area, one, they don't need permits, but two, they can't be located closer than 3 feet to a rear or side property line. If you're in a new subdivision, you can turn some of your homes into model homes as is showing. So that's going to be on a temporary basis. That's got to be done through the planning board. Greenhouses are permitted as long as the use of the structure is incidental to the permitted principal use and otherwise conforms with the applicable dimensional requirements set forth in the chapter. Again, a lot of legalese to say, yes, you can have a greenhouse as long as it is an accessory to the main home and that's not the main structure on that property. Also in an A district, that if you get authorized special permit from the Board of Appeals, then you can have dwelling models on site. There's some more requirements there. You can even have a daycare facility. Now I want to talk about this one real quick. If we go back up to the top, it says not including daycare facilities. This is as of right. So as of right, you cannot put a daycare facility in there. But if you get a special permit from the Board of Appeals, by special permit of the Board of Appeals, you can have daycare facilities. And the reason they do this is to limit the number of daycare facilities and also regulate the ones that are in place. Let's see. We have our electric and razor wire, agricultural use, and then we have the definition of a family. Okay, a one-family dwelling occupied with more than 8 persons living and cooking together as a single housekeeping unit through non-related by blood, adoption, or marriage, provided all the following conditions are met. You have to submit proof of a valid operating certificate, and the location does not unduly increase traffic congestion, off-site parking, noise levels. So what we're looking at here is, by special permit, we can have one-family homes turned into structures that will house many people. These can be group homes. These can be sober homes. These can be temporary housing. There's a lot of things that fit into this criteria, but it's all got to be done through special permit. The town needs to be aware of that. Then, and there's a lot of little intricacies here. It takes years to become really knowledgeable about all the stuff that's in this. The planning board issues their own special permits. So if you want to start your own college, okay, you can, but you got to get a permit from the planning board. The other catch is you have to have 75 acres, which is quite a bit of land, and you must have at least 400 feet of road frontage. Okay, so if you have that, you can start your own college or university. We'll go back to why it's such a restriction on there. It's pretty interesting why they do that. If you want to start your own golf course, okay, planning board's got to give you a special permit, but you need to have at least 50 acres. Human cemetery, I don't know why you want to do that, but you need a special permit as well. Museums, parks, playgrounds, boathouses, private community centers, rec buildings, outdoor facilities, part of a homeowners or condo association, and volunteer ambulance companies. All this stuff can be inside of a residential area as long as you get a special permit from the planning board. So a lot of little intricacies you have to be aware of. But it all comes down to when you get a piece of property and you know what district it's in, you go to the zoning code and you read, what can I do with it? And you just like we did now, you read through it very carefully and say, okay, yes, I can put a cemetery here, or I can build a golf course. I have 53 acres. It gives you that ability to do so. So you have to know where to look, and that's where we're going to be spending the time on, is showing you where to look for these different things.